video that's probably going to cause the controversy, I guess, but I feel like it's sort of something I have to do because there's just not a lot of people, I don't want to say trying with the FD, but like if you have an issue with the silver, you can jump online, look it up. There's endless people, which can also be bad because you get so much crap information. But like, yeah, it's been really hard to try and get this car to do what I want it to do, and I've obviously tried a lot of stuff, so I feel like I have a good perspective on all of this. So just getting straight into the Wisefab. So my first issue is going to be the upper arm. So you can see here we have two adjustments, right? The obvious issue with this that you can see immediately is once you extend this, it's a V, so it's going to get wider, so it no longer fits in the body. When you try to bolt this on, when you move it, it doesn't go back into the car. So yes, it's adjustable, but you can't use it anymore. So it's actually not adjustable in my opinion. Yeah, really not sure what's going on with that. That's a little bit pointless. And if you have a look at the Part Shop Max one, we'll show you in a second, this side is fixed, but the joint here is actually removable, and you add spaces to shorten and lengthen here, which actually works. So you can actually adjust your camber just from this part, which is half of the problem I had with this kit was how wide it was, and I couldn't even bring the top in to tuck it in within the fenders. So that would have been extremely useful, but yeah, not adjustable. So I'll show you what the Part Shop Max does. So this is the Part Shop Max upper arm. You can see two bolts here. Undo them, you slide the shims in, the ball joint stays with the knuckle. Very simple, easy to do at the track. Yeah, just a much better design, actually adjustable, and something I didn't actually address as well. This one doesn't have a lot of clearance, mostly this side, because this is the side when the wheel comes around it wants to have contact with. This one is just straight versus this one up the top is actually curved, so it has a heap more clearance compared to the Wisefab. So because of that, you don't have to run such wide track because you have that extra clearance. Okay, so upper arm, a few issues with that. Moving down to the knuckle, zero complaints there. Knuckle's amazing. Like I don't know if I said in this video, but it does feel great. Don't get me wrong. Everything about it is good. You put it on, it just works. But yeah, I mean, the knuckle's amazing. No real issues there. I love the lock stop. It's actually very useful. Lots of different settings, and the way it just sits on the arm makes it like you can throw the car in lock. It just sits there and nothing moves, nothing wobbles. Really good. Love that. Sort of wish I had a similar thing with this. The Ackerman stuff is all pretty standard these days on the angle kits, so no issues there as well. Down to the lower arm. So this is another problem for me, I guess. So this is a one-piece lower arm. So if you look up here on the Part Shop Max, it's actually two-piece. So imagine this arm is literally just a straight piece. Subframe, wheel. And then this arm here is what's going to control your caster. So all the binding issues I was originally having with this kit, I believe was this arm actually pivoting on this joint here. So what I've done to help with that is I used to run the caster arm on this most inner hole for clearance, but looking at it again, but that is going to give you the least leverage and the least control over this arm. So I initially tried to run on this further out hole, but didn't quite give enough caster, so I'm pretty much forced to run on this one, and I'm even pretty maxed out on caster with this one. So, but so far no issues. I haven't driven it in the dry yet, to be fair, but I'm confident that bit extra control, that's like what, 30 30 mil or so. So that's a fair bit more leverage than what I used to have. Versus this, all one piece. Cannot move, cannot slide. I think that's where a lot of the nice feel comes from in this kit. That I like. The width of it, I hate. I cannot express that enough. I would almost go as far to say that this doesn't fit in FD because you literally require such wide guides. Like, you need at least, if you want to run like a, I don't know, like even as small as an 8J plus 20, you need like a 60, 70 mil over fender, which for these cars, there's no good looking fenders in that size. None. So, I want the car to feel good, but for how ugly it made it, I just honestly couldn't put up with the extra bit of good feel for how much worse it looked compared to the Pacho Max. For me, it just wasn't worth it. That's the major issue I had with it. Also, pretty small lack of adjustment in the, I guess, lower arm. So usually on an FD, when you're like on an OEM arm, when you're using the eccentric bolts, when you slide or extend this one, you bring the wheel forward so you get some caster, but then you lose camber. And for how far back the wheel sits in the arch with the Wisefab, I had to really crank these arms all the way forward just so they didn't hit a lot of stuff on the wheel well. And because of that, I had to sacrifice camber. So you're always battling. If you want more caster, you got to take the camber out. And that's, when you're trying to get things aligned, that's obviously very painful and frustrating and very time consuming. So just, yeah, not much adjustability, a lot of sacrifices, but I think that's sort of part of what Wisefab is. It's sort of the geometry sorted. You just put it in your car and drive it, tweak it here and there, but trying to make the car look good and also drive good, this for me is just not it. If you're someone that just wants it to drive a certain way and then you'll just put any fenders on or any wheels on, you don't care, this is the go. This feels better than Pacho Max, but for me personally, it just doesn't drive so much better that I'm willing to put up with how bad it looks. Purely that simple. And I'll take the car off the lift now and just show you how the car looks now, because I'm in love with it again. Okay, so something I forgot about as well. So imagine the body of the car is here, the inner chassis rail. So this actually sticks out quite a way, and the whole reason Wisefab says they need all this width is for tyre clearance to the body. So with this hitting before it hits the body, all of your width has sort of been of a loss, because you've got this massive chunk of metal that sticks out past the body versus Pacho Max, which does stick out past the body, but not as much as this. And they say on the website a 225 40/18 fits on the front with no issues, and I have had issues with 225 40. I stepped down to a 225 35, still had issues with the hitting, so I had to run down 215 35, and that was fine. But there are instances where the competition that I run, we have 4 or 5 corners before the judging even starts, and by that point the grip race has been lost and I'm 3-4 cars behind, so that's not really an option. And I asked them about this issue. They asked me a bunch of wheel setups, specs and stuff that I was running, and I was running a higher inner clearance than they recommended, and once I sent the information, they didn't reply to me. So yeah, I don't know how to address that issue, because even if you pull this in, like, that's moving the whole thing. So initially I thought it was because I extended this so much, but that's all one piece, so it'll follow each other. Shouldn't affect the inner clearance at all. I did try it when it was shorter, and same issue, tire would hit this under load, and again it was like, you know, that far off the body, so you've got all that extra width and yet you're not hitting the body, yes, but you're hitting this, which is counterproductive. It's probably also worth mentioning, I've driven on a lot of FD knuckles. So my first one was actually made by Shinji Minowa, Hey Man. He just made me something. It felt really good, but I had stock lower arm, and anyone with an FD knows that the caliper hits the coilover bolt that's just the limit of the lower arm. I ended up selling that knuckle to a friend. I sort of wish I kept that knuckle and played with it a bit more, and maybe the Part Shop Max lower arm and did some stuff like that, but then I moved to Part Shop Max. What happened then? I think I had a little crash and I bent an arm and I had to wait a few months for parts. I'm impatient. I bought the Grace Knuckle, which is something they make. They don't really list, I think, but they do sell it for FD. Was not a fan. Just gonna leave it there. And that was like more of a scrubby setup. Very big scrub. Yeah, can apply for a Sylvia, but this isn't a Sylvia. It has a lot of different dynamics going on, so I feel like that wasn't a good knuckle for me. And then the Part Shop Max stuff came in, and then I drove on that for a long time, and then I made the switch to Wisefab. So, you know, I've driven quite a few different types here. There's like a typical cut and shut, then I did Part Shop Max, I did the big scrub, the Japanese style of knuckle. Did not like that. Continued with the Part Shop Max, played with that setup a fair bit, and then I tweaked this Wisefab quite a bit as well. Drove with it on it, a few different tires, a few different alignments. So just for some perspective, that I didn't just put something in my car as like, this is the best thing, do this, because I feel like that's pretty common. People will put a part on their car, it'll make a difference, and I think it's just the best thing ever. Whereas I've actually sort of had a bit of a process to this, and just my honest feedback. Obviously none of this is supplied by anyone, I'm not trying to upset anyone, it's just pure honest feedback from what I've done, because with FD stuff there's just not much, so just trying to be helpful, that's all. And my favourite part of the Part Shop Max is, look at that, a wheel that goes inside the fender. And with this I actually have full lock that I'll show you in a second. Like, I'm using all the Part Shop Max. It's inside the fender, no more stupid cardboard fenders on my fenders. Yeah, this for me is the biggest thing. So I'd sacrifice that little bit of feel to have the car look like this, because now I can't stop looking at it again. Before I would like look back and I'd be like, yuck. So yeah, I don't know, everyone's different I guess, but I'm not so dedicated to the competition that I'm willing to have my car look terrible. So it's got to have a balance of both. Obviously if it was such an advantage and I thought it was going to change the way I drove, I'd figure out a way to make it work, but it wasn't so dramatic of a change that I feel it was worth it, and I'm much happier with how it looks now. So we're just off the lock stop there, but that's essentially all of it. I've also added these pretty solid rubber bump stops to fix that issue I addressed in the last video. If that improves it, I'll make a more solid situation, but yeah, that's more for testing. But yeah, very happy with that. That's more than we had when we tested that Mobile last week. I think that combined with a little less front grip, it's going to be everything I want. So also last thing to address, so this is now with the spacers and everything, effectively a 8J plus 7 under the guard. Compared to Wisefab, I was running a 7.5 27, and it was out of the guard by 20-30 mil. So these wheels, technically, if I set these on the Wisefab, it would stick out an additional 26 mil. So if you combine the 20 mil that my old small wheels used to be, combined with the 26 of this, they would stick out, around 50 mil more than what they do now, and to do a very similar job. Yeah, much happier with this. And of course when you run an 8J, a 225 looks not so bad. On the 7.5, it's sort of got that weird look, I don't know how to explain it, but I guess like balloony look to it on the sidewall, whereas this just looks more natural. Yeah, so it's just interesting that you can have a similar amount of lock without all that extra track, without all that extra width that makes the car so ugly. And yet here I have something that sticks out more, is still inside the guard, and gives me very similar to lock. So yeah, ticks all the boxes. We just got to drive it hard in the dry and make sure the bind issue is gone, and then we're all in the clear.